The Force binds all things across the galaxy, connecting every living being in an invisible web of energy and destiny. But some arrivals defy even the Force's omniscient gaze. Some men carry their own gravity, their own inevitability. In the filthy streets of Nar Shaddaa, the smuggler's moon, where the Empire's grip loosens and the underworld thrives in neon-lit darkness, a stranger in black would soon remind everyone why legends are born from blood. The transport ship screamed through real space, trailing plasma and debris. Its hull bore scorch marks from weapons that didn't exist in this galaxy, energy, signatures that confused every scanner on Nar Shaddaa's orbital stations. It spiraled toward the moon's industrial sector, missing towers by meters, before slamming into a warehouse district controlled by the Guavian death gang. The impact carved a trench through duracrete and permacrete, sending a plume of smoke into the polluted sky. Inside the wreckage, John Wick opened his eyes. His head pounded. His vision swam. The interior of the ship was unrecognizable, alien technology fused with something that looked almost organic. He'd been in the Continental's sub-basement, tracking the syndicate that had violated the rules, when the world had simply dissolved. No explosion, no warning, just a sensation of being pulled through reality itself. Now he was somewhere else entirely. Wick extracted himself from the crash webbing, his body protesting but functional. Broken ribs? Possibly. Concussion? Definitely. But he'd worked through worse. His suit was torn, his weapons gone. He patted down his pockets, empty except for his Continental marker, the gold coin feeling heavier than it should in this strange place. The ship's emergency hatch blew outward with a hiss of pressurization. Wick stepped into chaos. The warehouse district stretched before him, a maze of rust-colored buildings stacked impossibly high, connected by bridges and platforms that seemed to defy gravity. Neon signs and languages he didn't recognize flickered everywhere. The air tasted of ozone, burning fuel, and something acrid he couldn't identify. Above, the sky was a bruised purple, choked with smog and the running lights of countless ships. Figures emerged from the shadows, humanoids, but wrong. Some had blue skin. Others had tentacles where mouths should be. They wore armor that looked functional but alien, carrying weapons that hummed with contained energy. 12 of them, forming a semicircle around the crash site. The leader stepped forward, speaking in a guttural language that meant nothing to Wick. But intent? Intent was universal. The weapon, some kind of rifle with a glowing power cell, was pointed directly at his chest. Wick raised his hand slowly, assessing. Exits. 3 alleyways, 1 too narrow. The weapons were energy-based, not kinetic. He counted heartbeats, watched breathing patterns, identified the leader by body language alone. The leader spoke again, angrier now. One of the others, a Rodian with bulbous eyes and green skin, moved closer, reaching for Wick with 3-fingered hands. Wick moved. His elbow caught the Rodian's throat, collapsing the windpipe. He spun, using the dying alien as a shield as energy bolts, brilliant. Red streaks that superheated the air lanced past him. The Rodian's body jerked as shots meant for Wick struck his former comrade instead. Wick stripped the weapon from dead fingers. A blaster pistol that felt wrong in his grip, too light. The balance off, but he adapted. Trigger discipline, sight picture, breath control. The fundamentals didn't change, even across universes. He fired 3 times. 3 headshots. The weapons discharged bolts of red energy instead of bullets. But the results were the same. Bodies dropped. The survivors scattered, shouting in that incomprehensible language, taking cover behind cargo crates marked with symbols he didn't recognize. Wick was already moving, staying low, using the wreckage as cover. He counted shots. The weapon's power cell displayed some kind of charge indicator. 12 shots left. 11 targets. They thought they had him pinned. They didn't understand what they were dealing with. He flanked left, vaulting over a cargo container. Coming up behind, 2 gang members focused on his last position. 2 shots, center mass. They fell without seeing him. 9 targets. Return fire carved smoking craters in the duracrete around him. Wick slid behind a repulsor sled, its anti-gravity field still active, humming with energy. He blind fired around the corner, suppressing, then rolled right as concentrated fire tore through his cover. The next 90 seconds were mathematical. Angles and timing. predicting movement, exploiting hesitation. The gang members were street thugs, not soldiers. They bunched up. They panic-fired. They forgot to check their flanks. Wick didn't forget anything. When the last body hit the ground, silence descended on the warehouse district. Smoke drifted from the blaster's barrel. Wick checked the charge, 3 shots remaining. He stripped 2 more blasters from corpses, tucking them into his belt, and retrieved a vibroblade from one of the bodies. The weapon vibrated at high frequency when activated, capable of cutting through most materials. Primitive compared to what he'd seen in his world, but effective. Footsteps echoed from deeper in the warehouse. More of them. Wick melted into the shadows, moving with the fluid economy of motion that had earned him the name Baba Yaga, the boogeyman. In his world, they'd told stories about him, the man you sent to kill the boogeyman. Here, in this impossible place with its alien species, and energy weapons and physics-defying architecture, no one knew his name. They would learn. A hover vehicle, sleek, armored, humming with repulsor technology, descended from an upper platform. Its side door opened, revealing a corpulent figure that could only be described as slug-like. Massive, segmented, with small arms and eyes that gleamed with cold intelligence. Beside the slug stood a humanoid covered in chitinous plates, holding a blaster rifle. The slug spoke, its voice amplified by translator technology. The words came out in accented but comprehensible English, or whatever this galaxy's lingua franca was. The human who kills 12 Guavian soldiers without breaking stride. Most impressive. You have cost me considerable credits today, stranger. But perhaps we can reach an accommodation. Wick stepped into the light, blaster held low but ready. I want information. Where am I? The slug laughed, a wet, bubbling sound. Nar Shada, human. The smuggler's moon. Controlled by the Hutt cartel. Specifically, controlled by me. Gorga the Hutt. And you've just slaughtered my collection crew. The Hutt's eyes narrowed. But a man with your skills? There's always work for someone who can kill so efficiently. The Empire pays well for certain services. The rebels pay desperately. And the independent contractors, bounty hunters, smugglers, assassins, they pay best of all. Wick holstered the blaster slowly. I'm not looking for work. Everyone's looking for work, human. Especially when they're stranded. On a moon where being unknown is the same as being prey. Gorga gestured with a stubby arm. You want off an AR Shada? You need credits. You need contacts. You need someone who knows which customs officials take bribes and which Imperial inspectors can be avoided. You need me. In the distance, sirens wailed, some kind of law enforcement or security force. The Hutt heard them too and smiled with a mouth full of teeth. Make your choice quickly, human. The Empire doesn't like unsanctioned violence in their territory. Even here, John Wick looked at the crashed ship, at the bodies surrounding him, at this impossible galaxy that operated by rules he didn't understand. He thought of his home, his world, and the unfinished business he'd left behind. Then he thought of survival. What kind of work? If you want to see more characters enter the Star Wars galaxy, hit that subscribe button and drop the name of a character you'd want to see in the comments below. May the Force be with you. Gorga the Hutt's smile widened. The kind you're already very good at. 3 weeks on Nar Shada taught John Wick that the underworld was the same everywhere. Different species, different technology, different names, but the fundamental rules remained unchanged. Power respected power. Credits bought. Silence. And everyone feared someone. Gorga's job started small. A Deveronian smuggler who'd skimmed from a spice shipment. A Twi'lek information broker selling secrets to competing cartels. A Quarren enforcer who'd gotten ambitious. Wick executed each contract with the same cold efficiency that had made him legendary in his own world. The blasters felt natural in his hands now, their weight and balance as familiar as his beloved Glock had been. He learned to recognize species by silhouette, to read body language across a dozen different physiologies, to kill in a galaxy where death came in 1,000 different forms. But Wick also listened. He absorbed information like a sponge, piecing together the shape of this galaxy while he worked. There was an empire, totalitarian, ruthless, built on the bones of something called the Republic. There were rebels, scattered, desperate, fighting a war they couldn't win. There was something called the Force, a mystical energy that apparently gave certain individuals impossible powers. And there were hunters, inquisitors, who served the Empire. and wielded weapons made of light that could cut through nearly anything. He filed it all away. Knowledge was survival. The cantina where Gorga summoned him stank of alcohol and desperation. Wick entered through the back entrance, scanning the crowd automatically. 37 patrons. 4 armed guards. 2 exits. 3 concealed weapons within his reach if things went wrong. The band, some kind of insectoid species, played music that grated against his ears. Gorga occupied the largest booth, his bulk spilling across cushions while attendants hovered nearby. Beside him sat someone new, a human, pale and severe, wearing a crisp gray uniform that screamed military discipline. The uniform bore an insignia Wick had learned to recognize: the Imperial Security Bureau. Wick approached without hesitation, his gait controlled, his hands visible but relaxed. The ISB agent watched him with eyes like chips of ice. "Ah, my favorite contractor," Gorga rumbled. Translator technology, making his huttese understandable. "Allow me to introduce Agent Callus of the Imperial Security Bureau. He has a problem that requires your particular expertise." Callus didn't extend his hand. "You're the assassin. Who's been disrupting operations?" Across the Corellian sector, 12 confirmed kills in 3 weeks. No failures. No witnesses. His voice was clipped, precise. Impressive efficiency for someone with no record, no identification, no past. Wick said nothing. Let them fill the silence. "The Empire appreciates specialists," Callus continued. "Particularly those who don't ask questions and don't leave loose ends. I have a target. A former Republic officer who's been organizing resistance. Cells in the Outer Rim. He's proven elusive. Traditional methods have failed." "Traditional methods," Wick said quietly. "Or incompetent methods." Gorga laughed, but Callus's expression didn't change. "You have a reputation for results. The Empire will pay 50,000 credits for confirmed termination. Provide proof, and you'll have access to Imperial resources, new identity, clean records, transit papers that can take you anywhere in the galaxy. 50,000 credits. Enough to buy passage on a dozen ships. To disappear into whatever corner of this galaxy he chose. Enough to finance his search for a way home." Callus produced a hollow projector, activating it with a touch. A 3-dimensional image materialized above the table, a human male. Weathered face, graying hair. Wearing what looked like military fatigues. Captain Jace Varun. Former Republic officer, now leading a cell on Lothal. Intelligence suggests he's planning to hit an Imperial convoy, transporting Kyber crystals. Wick studied the hologram. "Why me?" "The Empire has resources. Because Captain Varun has proven adept at avoiding Imperial entanglements. He has contacts, safe houses, sympathizers. He knows how we operate." Callus leaned forward. "You, on the other hand, are an unknown variable. No connection to the Empire. No pattern for him to recognize. You can infiltrate where our agents cannot." It was a lie Wick knew. Or at least, not the complete truth. The Empire wanted deniability. If this went wrong, they'd have a nameless contractor to blame. If it went right, they'd have another potential asset to exploit. But the credits were real, and the transit papers could open doors. "I'll need information," Wick said. "Known associates. Movement patterns. Location of the safe houses." Callus smiled thinly. "It will be provided. You have 1 week." The meeting ended with the efficiency of a business transaction. Wick left through the same back entrance, hyper-aware of his surroundings. The Empire now knew his face. That complicated things. But complications were just variables to be managed. He'd made it 3 blocks when he felt it, the sensation of being watched. Not the casual observation of a street thug or pickpocket. This was focused, professional. Wick altered his route, taking a turn into a narrow alley between 2 crumbling tenement buildings. The passage reeked of garbage and ozone. He continued at a casual pace, then suddenly reversed, pressing his back against the wall beside a recessed doorway. Footsteps approached. Light. Controlled. Then they stopped. "I know you're there," Wick said quietly. "You have 3 seconds to show yourself before I start shooting." A figure emerged from the shadows, small, humanoid, wearing a hooded cloak that obscured their features. When they pulled back the hood, Wick found himself looking at a child. Human, maybe 8 years old, with dark hair and eyes that seemed too old for their face. "You're not like the others," the child said. Their voice trembled slightly. I can't feel you in the Force. You're just empty." Wick kept his hand near his blaster. Who are you? My name is Sorry. The child glanced over their shoulder nervously. The Inquisitors are hunting me. They killed my parents last month. I've been hiding, but they're getting closer. I can feel them. That's not my problem. Please. Sorry's voice cracked. You're the only one who might be able to help. The others, the ones who try to protect. Force sensitives, they all have the same patterns. The Inquisitors know how they think, where they hide. But you're different. You don't think like anyone else in this galaxy. Wick studied the child. With the same analytical coldness. He'd apply to any tactical situation. A force sensitive. The Empire hunted them, which meant this child was a liability. A complication that could bring the full weight of Imperial attention down on anyone associated with them. The smart play was to walk away. Or better yet, turn the child over to Callus, leverage for better terms on the Vern contract. There are others who can help you, Wick said. Rebels. Underground networks. They're all compromised or scattered. Please. I saw what you did to those Guavian soldiers. You're not afraid of anything. I'm afraid of plenty, Wick said. But fear is just another variable. He turned to leave. They'll torture me, Sorry said quietly. The Inquisitors. They'll dig through my mind for any other force sensitives I might know about. Then they'll kill me, or worse, turn me into one of them. Wick stopped. He didn't look back. There's a transport leaving from Bay 94 in 6 hours, he said. Low-security freighter heading to the mid-rim. If you're not there, I can't help you. He walked away before the child could respond. Before he could second-guess the decision, the smart play would have been to leave Sorry to her fate. The Empire wasn't his fight. This galaxy's politics weren't his concern. But as he navigated Nar Shadda's twisted streets, John Wick thought about the Continental's rules, about codes that meant something, about the difference between an assassin and a monster. In his world, there had been lines you didn't cross. Children were one of them. Even in a galaxy far from home, some rules were universal. Bay 94 was a rust bucket cargo facility on Nar Shadda's lower levels, where the neon lights didn't reach and the air tasted like industrial runoff. Wick arrived 40 minutes early, watching the docking bay from a maintenance catwalk. The freighter was exactly as advertised, a battered YT 1300 light freighter with scoring across its hull and a hyperdrive that probably needed twice its scheduled maintenance. The captain, a grizzled Duros with blue skin and red eyes, was arguing with the dockmaster over berthing fees. Sorry appeared 15 minutes before departure, moving through shadows like she'd been trained. The child wore different clothes now, nondescript, grays that helped her blend with the dockworkers. Smart, but not smart enough to avoid the two figures who detached from the crowd 30 meters behind her. Wick's hand moved to his blaster before his conscious mind registered the threat. The hunters wore black armor, sleeker than stormtrooper gear, with helmets that featured narrow visors. They moved with predatory purpose, cutting through the crowd without regard for the beings they shouldered aside. One reached for something. At their belt, a cylindrical weapon that ignited with a snap hiss, extending a blade of crimson light. A lightsaber. Wick had heard about them, seen holographic footage. But seeing one in person was different. The blade hummed with contained violence, casting everything nearby in blood-red illumination. Inquisitors. Sorry saw them and froze. The child's eyes went wide with terror, the kind of fear that came from experience. From knowing exactly what those hunters represented. Wick was already moving. He dropped from the catwalk, landing in a three-point stance that absorbed the impact. The Inquisitors were focused on Sorry, which gave him the heartbeat he needed. He came up behind the nearest one, vibroblade sliding from its sheath with a whisper of metal. The blade activated, its high-frequency vibration creating a deadly edge. The Inquisitor's armor was well-made, designed to deflect blaster bolts. But armor had weak points. Wick drove the vibroblade into the gap between helmet and gorget, severing the spinal cord before the hunter could cry out. The body collapsed, the lightsaber deactivating as dead fingers released it. The second Inquisitor spun impossibly fast, faster than human reflexes should allow. The crimson blade arced toward Wick's head. He dropped low, feeling the heat of the weapon pass centimeters above him, and drove his shoulder into the Inquisitor's midsection. The tackle shouldn't have worked. These hunters had to be augmented, enhanced somehow, but surprise and momentum did what strength couldn't. They hit the deck hard. Wick's hand shot to the Inquisitor's wrist, controlling the lightsaber arm. The blade carved through a cargo container. Superheating metal, but Wick kept the pressure constant. His other hand found the vibroblade, still slick with the first hunter's blood. The Inquisitor tried to wrench free, began to speak, likely calling for backup or using some kind of force power. Wick didn't let him finish. The vibroblade found the helmet's seal, found flesh beneath, and the Inquisitor went still. Wick rolled to his feet, breathing controlled despite the adrenaline. The entire engagement had lasted maybe 8 seconds. Around them, dockworkers scattered, shouting in a dozen languages. Alarms began to wail. "Run," Wick told Sari. "The ship. Now." The child didn't argue. They sprinted toward the freighter as Wick covered their retreat. Blaster in one hand, the dead Inquisitor's lightsaber in the other. He didn't activate the weapon, didn't know how and didn't have time to learn, but kept it as insurance. The Duro's captain saw them coming and swore in Durese. "No, absolutely not. I run cargo, not refugees." Wick tossed a credit chip onto the boarding ramp. 5,000 credits. A quarter of what Callus had offered for the Vern job. The captain caught it, checked the balance, and swore again. "Get aboard. But when the Empire comes asking, I've never seen either of you." The ramp sealed behind them as repulsor engines screamed to life. Through the viewport, Wick watched as more black-armored figures poured into the docking bay. 4, 6, 8 of them. An Imperial patrol speeder skidded to a halt. Stormtroopers deploying in disciplined formation. Hyperdrives charging. The Duro's captain shouted from the cockpit. "But we need 30 seconds. Shields won't hold against that much concentrated fire." Wick moved to the freighter's gun turret, a retrofitted quad-laser cannon that had seen better decades. The controls were different from anything in his world, but the fundamentals remained. Target acquisition. Lead the shot. Controlled bursts. He fired. Red energy bolts lanced from the cannon, stitching across the docking bay. He wasn't aiming to kill, aimed instead at the patrol speeder's repulsor array. The speeder lurched sideways, crashing into a stack of cargo containers and creating a barrier between the Inquisitors and the freighter. 10 seconds, the captain called. The Inquisitors didn't waste time shooting. One of them, taller than the others, with a double-bladed lightsaber that spun like a deadly pinwheel, began deflecting the turret fire. The energy bolts ricocheted off the spinning blades, redirected with impossible precision. Another Inquisitor raised a hand, and Wick felt something push against the freighter's hull. Not physical, not exactly, but the ship groaned under invisible pressure. 5 seconds. Wick fired the last burst low, targeting the deck plating beneath the Inquisitor's feet. The bolts punched through durasteel and into the maintenance tunnels below. Coolant lines ruptured, venting superheated gas that forced the hunters back. Now, the stars stretched, elongated, and became lines of light. Hyperspace swallowed them. Wick climbed down from the turret, muscles loose, breathing steady. The adrenaline was already fading, replaced by the cold calculation of consequences. He'd killed 2 Inquisitors and escaped with a force-sensitive child the Empire wanted. That wasn't just burning bridges, that was detonating them. Sari sat in the cargo hold, knees pulled to chest, crying silently. The child's shoulders shook, but they made no sound. Practiced grief, the kind you learned when crying out loud got you killed. Wick sat across from her, saying nothing. Silence was its own language. After several minutes, Sari looked up. "Why did you help me? You don't know me. You don't care about the Force or the Empire or any of it." "No," Wick agreed. "I don't." "Then why?" Wick thought about his world. About the dog that had been the last gift from his dying wife. About the consequences of crossing lines that shouldn't be crossed. About the thin difference between civilization and chaos. "Because there are rules," he said finally, "even when nobody's enforcing them. The Inquisitors will hunt you now. The Empire will put a bounty on your head. You'll never be safe. I'm never safe anyway." The Duro's captain emerged from the cockpit, looking haggard. "We're 8 hours from Lothal. After that, you're on your own. I've got a family on Corellia, and I'm not dying for some human's conscience." Lothal, where Captain Varun was supposed to be organizing his resistance cell, where Wick was supposed to kill him for 50,000 credits and Imperial transit papers. The irony wasn't lost on him. "The Empire knows you helped us," Sari said quietly. "Agent Callus will find out. He'll send hunters. Let him." Wick checked his blasters, ensuring the power cells were charged. I'm harder to kill than I look. The child almost smiled at that. You really don't understand what you're up against, do you? The Inquisitors aren't just hunters. They're force-sensitive. They can feel emotions, predict movements, sense danger before it happens. And the one with the double blade? That was the fifth brother. He's killed Jedi Masters. Then he hasn't met anyone like me. What makes you so different? Wick looked at the child with eyes that had seen too much death, carried too much weight. I don't give up. Ever. And I don't leave debts unpaid. You don't owe me anything. Maybe not. Wick stood, moving toward the viewport where hyperspace streamed past in brilliant azure. But I made a choice back there. And I own my choices. The freighter shuddered slightly, its aging hyperdrive complaining about the prolonged jump. Somewhere behind them, across the galaxy's communication networks, alerts were spreading. 2 dead Inquisitors. 1 escaped force-sensitive. A mysterious assassin with no records, no background, no allegiance. John Wick had come to this galaxy looking for a way home. Instead, he'd just started a war. He thought about the Continental, about the High Table, about the world of assassins who operated by strict codes. That world felt very far away now. But the principles, the rules that separated professionals from animals, those traveled across universes. Get some rest, he told Sari. When we hit Lothal, things get complicated. The child curled up on a cargo net, exhausted and traumatized but alive. Wick remained at the viewport, watching the impossible beauty of faster-than-light travel, already planning his next moves. Callus would send hunters. The Inquisitorius would want revenge. Gorga the Hutt would see a broken contract and a liability to eliminate. And somewhere on Lothal, Captain Varun was organizing resistance against an empire that would stop at nothing to maintain control. John Wick had killed for money, for revenge, for survival. He'd never killed for a cause. Maybe it was time to start. Lothal was a frontier world, open, grasslands dotted with industrial complexes where the Empire strip-mined resources and crushed local resistance. With casual brutality, the freighter touched down at a minor spaceport outside Capital City, and Wick paid the Duros. Captain the remaining credits he'd earned from Gorga's contracts. No goodbyes, no gratitude, just a professional transaction between people who understood that survival meant keeping your distance. Sari stayed close as they moved through the spaceport, hood pulled low. Wick had stolen Imperial uniforms from a supply depot during their brief layover, gray technician, coveralls that let them blend with the endless flow of workers servicing the Empire's machinery. The disguise wouldn't hold up under scrutiny, but it bought them time. Where are we going? Sari whispered. To find Captain Varun. Wick adjusted the blaster hidden under his coveralls. Before Callus's people do. I thought you were supposed to kill him. Plans change. They moved through Capital City's lower levels, where Imperial propaganda posters covered every surface and stormtrooper patrols marched with mechanical precision. Wick observed everything: patrol patterns, shift changes, security checkpoints, vulnerabilities. The Empire was efficient but predictable. They relied on overwhelming force and fear to maintain control, which meant they'd grown complacent in areas where resistance seemed crushed. It took 3 days of careful reconnaissance to locate Varun's safe house. 3 days of listening in cantinas, following supply runners, mapping the network of sympathizers who smuggled food and medicine to the scattered resistance. 3 days of staying invisible while Imperial search parties combed the city looking for a child and an assassin. The safe house was located beneath an old communications tower on Lothal's outskirts. Wick approached at sunset, when the long shadows would mask his approach. Sari waited in a drainage tunnel, 200 meters away with instructions to run if he didn't return in 30 minutes. 2 guards watched the entrance, humans, armed with blaster rifles, alert but not military trained. Wick could have killed them both in under 3 seconds. Instead, he raised his hands and stepped into their sight lines. I need to speak with Captain Varun. The guard's weapons snapped up instantly. On the ground. Now, my name is John Wick. I'm here because Agent Callus of the ISB sent me to kill your captain, but I've decided not to. The guards exchanged glances. One spoke into a comm link, rapid-fire sentences too quiet for Wick to hear. After 30 seconds, the response came back. Inside. Slowly. hands visible. The safe house's interior was cramped, a converted maintenance bunker with cots, supply crates, and a holographic tactical display showing Imperial positions across Lothal. 15 people occupied the space, all armed, all watching Wick with expressions ranging from suspicion to outright hostility. Captain Jace Vern stood beside the tactical display. He was older than his hologram had suggested, with gray threading through dark hair and eyes that had seen too many battles. But his bearing remained military, shoulders back, stance balanced, ready to move at a heartbeat's notice. "John Wick," Vern said. His voice carried authority despite the circumstances. "The ISB's new contractor. 12 confirmed kills in 3 weeks, all executed with surgical precision. And now you're here, supposedly to warn me instead of collect Callus's bounty." He gestured, and 2 guards moved to flank Wick. "Give me one reason. I shouldn't execute you right now." Wick met his gaze without flinching. "Because I killed 2 Inquisitors on Nar Shaddaa 3 days ago. The Empire's hunting me now, which means Callus's contract is void. Your people need help. I need allies. Simple mathematics." "You killed Inquisitors?" One of the other resistance fighters, a Twi'lek woman with scars across her leku, stepped forward. "That's impossible. Inquisitors are force-sensitive. They can predict. They can be killed," Wick interrupted. "They're fast, well-trained, and they have advantages I don't understand. But they bleed. That's enough." Vern studied him for a long moment. "Why turn on the Empire? Money wasn't enough? Callus offers substantial rewards for cooperation. The Empire wanted me to kill you. Then they sent Inquisitors after a child." Wick's voice remained flat, emotionless. "I don't work for people who hurt children. A moral assassin." Vern's laugh was bitter. "How refreshing. The galaxy's burning, the Empire's crushing freedom across 1,000 systems. And you draw the line at children. Everyone draws the line somewhere. And what happens when the Empire finds this place? When Callus sends stormtroopers instead of contractors? Will your moral line hold against walkers and orbital bombardment?" Wick said nothing. Vern had a point. This safe house, this resistance cell, they were one good intelligence leak away from annihilation. The Empire had resources, manpower, and the ruthless efficiency of a military machine that had conquered an entire galaxy. But they also had patterns, predictable protocols, centralized command structures that created vulnerabilities. "Your next operation," Wick said, nodding toward the tactical display. "The Imperial convoy carrying Kyber crystals." "When?" Varun's eyes narrowed. "How do you know about that?" "Callus mentioned it when he briefed me. He knows you're planning to hit the convoy, which means it's a trap." The safe house erupted in overlapping voices, denials, accusations, tactical arguments. Varun raised a hand, and silence fell immediately. Good discipline. Better than Wick had expected from a scattered resistance cell. "Explain," Varun ordered. Wick pointed to the tactical display. "Callus is ISB. Intelligence and counterinsurgency. He doesn't just react, he manipulates. He told me about the convoy to establish bona fides, to make his briefing seem comprehensive. But that also means he wants you to know about it. It's bait, or it's legitimate intelligence that he accidentally revealed." "No." Wick shook his head. "Callus doesn't make mistakes. Everything's calculated. He expected me to infiltrate your cell, gain trust, and either kill you or feed him information about your operations. The convoy's the lure. You hit it, Callus springs the trap, and he eliminates your entire cell in one engagement." The Twi'lek woman, Hera, someone called her, crossed her arms. "If that's true, then how do we know you're not still working for Callus? This could be misdirection to make us abandon a legitimate target." "You don't know," Wick admitted. "But in about 15 minutes, the child I saved from the Inquisitors will emerge from a drainage tunnel 200 meters east. If I was still working for the Empire, I wouldn't have risked my life to protect her." Vern studied the tactical display, jaw tight. "We've been planning this operation for 6 weeks. The Kyber crystals are being transported to an Imperial facility for weapon development. If we don't stop that convoy, those crystals become another tool of oppression. Then we change the operation," Wick said. "Hit a different target. Something Callus doesn't expect." "Such as?" Wick moved to the display, examining the Imperial positions. His tactical mind, honed through years of impossible contracts and improvised warfare, processed the Information with cold efficiency. Here, he pointed to a garrison on Lothal's northern continent. Smaller facility, less defensible, but it houses the regional communication array. Take that out, and you blind Imperial coordination across 3 sectors. It won't stop them, but it'll slow them down. That facility has 2 platoons of stormtroopers and automated defenses. Then we'll need a plan better than frontal assault. Varun exchanged glances with his officers. Hera looked skeptical. A human male with a jagged scar across his face, introduced as Lieutenant Kor, seemed cautiously interested. The others remained silent, waiting for their captain's decision. You're asking us to trust someone who was sent here to kill me, Varun said finally. Someone with no allegiance to our cause, no belief in what we're fighting for. Why would you risk your life for a rebellion you don't believe in? Wick thought about his world, about the Continental's rules and the High Table's corruption, about how even assassins needed codes to separate themselves from monsters, about Helen and the dog, and the choice to walk away that had been stolen from him. I've spent my life killing for other people's reasons, he said quietly. Money, revenge, survival. Maybe it's time. I killed for something that matters. Varun held his gaze for a long moment, then nodded slowly. All right, John Wick. We'll try it your way. But understand this. If you betray us, if this is some elaborate ISB manipulation, I'll kill you myself. Fair enough. And the child? Sorry. She stays here. Under protection. Non-negotiable. We're not babysitters. You're resistance fighters protecting people from Imperial tyranny, Wick said. What's one more? Before Varun could respond, alarms shrieked through the safe house. Red lights flashed. The holographic display flickered and died. Contact, someone shouted. Imperial forces, 300 meters, and closing. Hera rushed to a sensor console. 2 at STS, for patrol speeders, 30-plus stormtroopers. They found us. Varun swore viciously. How? We've been careful, covered our tracks. Doesn't matter how. Wick was already moving toward the weapons locker, stripping off the coveralls to reveal his black tactical suit underneath. They're here. What's the evacuation protocol? Tunnels beneath the facility. But they'll have those covered if they know we're here. Then we make them think we're breaking out. Through the front. Wick grabbed 2 blaster rifles and a thermal detonator. I'll create a diversion. Get your people out through the tunnels while Imperial forces are focused on me. That's suicide. Wick checked the rifle's power cells, his movements economical and practiced. I've survived worse odds. You don't have to do this. You're not one of us. Not yet. Wick moved toward the exit, already calculating firing angles and retreat paths. But maybe I'm starting to be. Outside, through the safe house's narrow viewport, he could see the AT-STS. Approaching, massive 2-legged walkers, bristling with weaponry. Stormtroopers deployed in textbook formation, their white armor gleaming in the fading light. And leading them, distinctive in his gray ISB uniform, walked Agent Callus. John Wick smiled without humor. He'd been hunted before. By gangs, by high-table assassins, by the entire Continental system. They'd all learned the same lesson. You don't corner the boogeyman. You die trying. The safe house's main entrance opened onto a killing field, 50 meters of open ground before the nearest cover, perfectly illuminated by the AT-STS searchlights. Callus had positioned his forces with professional precision. Walkers at 10 and 2 o'clock. Speeders circling to cut off escape routes. Stormtroopers in overlapping fire zones. It was the kind of tactical setup designed to make resistance impossible. Wick studied it for 3 seconds, then activated the safe house's external speakers. Callus, I know you can hear me. The ISB agent's voice crackled back, amplified through the walker's comm system. Mr. Wick, I'm disappointed. You showed such promise. 50,000 credits and a clean identity, all for one simple termination. Instead, you killed 2 Inquisitors and harbor a fugitive Force-sensitive. A pause. Come out. Face Imperial justice. I'll ensure your death is quick. Counterproposal. Wick armed the thermal detonator. Watching the timer display. You withdraw your forces. Let the people inside leave. Then you and I settle this. Callus laughed. You're in no position to negotiate. You're outnumbered, outgunned, and surrounded. This ends one way, with your corpse and the complete elimination of Varun's cell. That's what you think. Wick threw the detonator. It arced through the air, tumbling end over end. and detonated 30 meters from the nearest AT-ST. The explosion was brilliant. Superheated plasma expanding in a sphere that carved a crater in the hard-packed earth and sent shrapnel, screaming in all directions. Stormtroopers scattered, their formations breaking. The walkers reoriented, weapons tracking toward the blast site. Wick was already moving. He burst through a side exit, hitting the ground at a dead sprint. Using the smoke and confusion as cover, blaster bolts carved red streaks through the air around him, predictable patterns. Stormtroopers firing on programmed responses rather than tactical assessment. He slid behind a cargo container, came up firing, and dropped 3 white-armored soldiers before they could adjust. The nearest AT-ST swiveled its head, twin blaster cannons locking onto his position. Wick rolled left as the cannons fired, the bolts punching molten holes through the container. Superheated metal sprayed across his back, searing through his suit, but he kept moving. Pain was just information. Damage assessment came later. He sprinted toward the communications tower, using its support structure as cover. The AT-ST's pilot adjusted, trying to track him, but the walker's movements were mechanical, predictable. Wick timed his run between cannon bursts, feeling the heat of near misses, hearing the whump 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 of energy discharge. 20 meters. 15. 10. He reached the tower's base and activated the second thermal detonator, the one he'd stolen from the weapons locker and set to delayed trigger. He wedged it between support struts, started the timer, and kept running as the AT-ST's foot slammed down where he'd been standing a heartbeat before. Behind him, the safe house doors burst open. Varun's people emerged from the tunnels 100 meters west, scrambling toward pre-positioned speeders and swoop bikes. The stormtroopers saw them, began to reposition, but Wick's diversion had split their focus. Half pursued the resistance fighters, half stayed focused on him. Good. That was the plan. The thermal detonator exploded, taking out the tower's primary support structure. Durasteel groaned, twisted, and the entire tower collapsed directly onto the AT-ST. The walker staggered, one leg buckling under thousands of tons of wreckage. Its cannons fired wildly as the pilot fought for control, bolts carving across the battlefield and into Imperial positions. Friendly fire was still fire. Wick used the chaos to close distance with a patrol speeder. The pilot saw him coming, tried to bring the vehicle's weapons to bear, but Wick was faster. He vaulted onto the speeder's hood, smashed the viewport with his rifle butt, and fired twice. The pilot slumped. Wick hauled the body out, took the controls, and gunned the repulsor engines. The speeder screamed across the battlefield at 200 kilometers per hour. Stormtroopers dove aside. Wick targeted the second AT-ST, playing a game of lethal chicken with a 30-ton war machine. The walker's pilot fired, bolts vaporizing the ground behind the speeder as Wick weaved, then cut hard left at the last second. The AT-ST pivoted to track him, and that rotation exposed its vulnerable rear armor. Wick's rifle sang. Precisely placed shots punched through the walker's reactor housing. The reactor didn't explode. Imperial engineering was too good for that, but it shut down, and the walker collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Enough! The voice boomed across the battlefield, amplified beyond human capacity. Wick looked up to see a figure descending from an Imperial shuttle that had arrived unnoticed. During the chaos, the figure wore black armor similar to the Inquisitors he'd killed on Nar Shaddaa, but the design was more refined, more threatening. A double-bladed lightsaber hung at their belt, and they moved with fluid grace that suggested absolute mastery of their augmented abilities. The fifth brother, the Inquisitor Sari had warned him about. "You killed my brothers," the fifth brother said, deactivating his helmet. Beneath it was a humanoid face with gray skin and red tattoos. His eyes burned with cold fury. "You, who have no connection to the Force, no power beyond mortal skill, you dare challenge the Inquisitorius?" Wick stepped off the speeder, both blasters drawn. "Seems I already did. Then you'll die learning the difference between killing and facing." The fifth brother ignited his lightsaber. The double-bladed weapon spun in his hands, a wheel of crimson death. "The Force grants me vision, speed, power beyond your comprehension. What do you have, assassin? Focus." Wick fired. The fifth brother moved impossibly fast, the spinning lightsaber deflecting bolts back toward their origin. Wick was already diving, rolling, coming up in a new firing position. The return bolts scorched the ground where he'd been standing. He fired again, 3 quick bursts from different angles, forcing the Inquisitor to split his defense. One bolt got through, grazing the fifth brother's shoulder. The Inquisitor's eyes widened. You calculated the deflection angles. I calculate everything. They circled each other across a battlefield littered with wreckage and bodies. Stormtroopers had pulled back, giving their superior room to work. In the distance, Wick could hear repulsor engines fading, Varun's people escaping while the Empire focused on him. Good. That was always the plan. The fifth brother extended one hand, and Wick felt that push again. Invisible force slamming into his chest, lifting him off his feet, hurling him 15 meters backward into a cargo container. The impact drove the air from his lungs. Broken ribs? Definitely. Maybe punctured lung. He pushed himself upright anyway. Pain was just information. You can't win, the fifth brother said, walking forward with casual confidence. I've killed Jedi Masters. Warriors who trained their entire lives in the Force. What chance does a mundane killer have? Wick's hand found the lightsaber he'd taken from the dead Inquisitor on Nar Shaddaa. He'd studied it during the hyperspace journey, figured out its activation mechanism, practiced the weight and balance. It wasn't his preferred weapon. Too light, too elegant, too different from the brutal efficiency of firearms. But it would do. He activated the blade. Crimson light blazed to life, humming with contained power. The fifth brother laughed. You think wielding a lightsaber makes you a match for me? These weapons require force sensitivity, years of training, connection too. Wick attacked. No flourishes. No ceremony. Just brutal, economical violence. He came in low and fast, the lightsaber cutting horizontal where the fifth brother's spinning defense left gaps. The Inquisitor blocked, but barely, surprise disrupting his form. Wick pressed, driving forward with relentless aggression. The fifth brother recovered, his double blades spinning faster, creating a defensive wall of energy. But Wick had spent 30 years learning to read opponents, to find patterns in chaos, to turn technique against itself. The spinning defense was impressive, but it was also predictable. Every rotation followed the same arc. Every block positioned the blades in mathematically consistent locations. Wick feinted high, dropped low, and swept the Inquisitor's legs. The fifth brother went down hard. His lightsaber flew from his hands, deactivating as it tumbled across the ground. Wick stood over him, his stolen blade at the Inquisitor's throat. You were saying? Wick asked quietly. The fifth brother's hand shot up, that invisible force gripping Wick's throat, crushing his windpipe. Wick couldn't breathe, couldn't speak, but his hand remained steady. The lightsaber's tip pressed against the Inquisitor's jugular, drawing a thin line of blood. They stared at each other, predator and predator, neither willing to yield. If you kill me, the fifth brother gasped, the Empire will never stop hunting you. Every Inquisitor, every bounty hunter, every agent, until the end of your days. They're already hunting me. Wick's vision darkened at the edges. Oxygen deprivation taking its toll. Might as well give them a reason. The force grip tightened. Wick's lightsaber pressed deeper. A shot rang out. Not a blaster, something else. The fifth brother's concentration broke as a projectile slammed into his shoulder. The force grip released. Wick collapsed, gasping, as the Inquisitor clutched his wound. Captain Varun emerged from cover, holding an ancient slug-thrower rifle. Thought you could use backup. I told you to get your people out. They're out. I came back. Varun fired again, forcing the fifth brother to roll aside. Besides, you saved my life. Deaths matter. Wick retrieved his blasters, breathing ragged but functional. The fifth brother was retreating now, one hand pressed to his wounded shoulder. Fury and something else, respect, maybe, or fear, in his eyes. This isn't over, John Wick, the Inquisitor said. You've made an enemy of the Empire, of the Inquisitorius, of forces you can't comprehend. Add it to the list. The fifth brother, Force pulled his lightsaber back to his hand and limped toward the waiting shuttle. Callus emerged from behind a walker, his expression unreadable. You've chosen your side, Mr. Wick. The Empire has a long memory. So do I. The Imperial forces withdrew in disciplined formation, loading their casualties, leaving the battlefield to the victors. But it wasn't victory, Wick knew. It was a temporary reprieve. The Empire would return with more soldiers, more walkers, more resources. This was their galaxy. He was just a stranger trying to survive. Varun clapped him on the shoulder, wincing at his own injuries. Not bad for an outsider. You fight like you've been doing this your whole life. I have been. Wick deactivated the lightsaber, studying the weapon thoughtfully. Just different enemies. We need to move. Imperial reinforcements will arrive within the hour. They rendezvoused with the resistance cell 3 kilometers away, where Sari waited with the others. The child ran to Wick, eyes bright with tears, and he knelt to her level. You're hurt, Sari said, touching the burns on his suit. I've had worse. The 5th brother, he's one of the most dangerous Inquisitors. You really fought him. We both walked away. That counts as a draw. Hera approached, her earlier skepticism replaced with cautious respect. You saved all of us. The Empire would have killed everyone in that safe house. Instead, we're alive. And you destroyed 2 at STS and humiliated an Inquisitor. She paused. Who are you, really? Wick looked at the gathered fighters. Humans. Twi'leks, a scarred Lazet. A protocol droid with one arm missing. They were battered, under-equipped, fighting a war they'd probably lose. But they were still fighting. Someone who's tired of working for the wrong people, he said finally. Varun produced a holographic communicator. I'm sending a message to Alliance Command. They need to know about you. About what you've done. The rebellion could use someone with your skills. I'm not a soldier. No. You're something better. You're unpredictable. The Empire can't profile you. Can't predict you. Because you don't fit their models. That's valuable. Wick thought about his world, still impossibly distant. About the Continental and its codes. About Helen and the life he'd tried to build before it all burned. Maybe he'd never make it home. Maybe this galaxy, with its force and its empire and its desperate rebels, was where he'd stay. If that was true, he'd make it count. All right, he said. But I work my way. No command structure. No political games. You point me at targets that deserve killing, and I'll handle it. Deal. Varun extended his hand. Wick shook it. An alliance forged in blood and pragmatism. The kind that might actually last. Above them, Lothal's twin moons rose over the grasslands, casting silver light across a battlefield wherein assassin from another world had chosen a side he'd never expected to join. The Empire would come for him. The Inquisitorius would hunt him. Callus would deploy every resource to eliminate him. Let them come. John Wick had survived the high table. He'd survived the Continental's excommunication. He'd survived being hunted by the entire assassin underworld. The Empire was just another organization that thought fear and numbers meant control. They'd learn otherwise. The galaxy would remember the name John Wick, though they'd never know where he came from or what drove him. Some called him the Ghost, for his ability to appear from nowhere and vanish without trace. Others whispered he was Baba, Yaga reborn, the boogeyman who hunted the Empire's hunters. The Inquisitorius marked him as priority target 01, more dangerous than Jedi survivors because he couldn't be predicted, couldn't be sensed through the Force. Captain Varun's resistance cell became a strike team that operated across the Outer Rim, hitting Imperial facilities with surgical precision. Sari trained with them, learning to control her Force sensitivity while staying hidden from Inquisitors. And at the center of it all was a man in black who fought with the focus and determination of someone who'd lost everything once and refused to lose anything again. Agent Callus filed reports about the anomaly, the assassin who defied categorization. The 5th brother nursed his wounds and planned revenge. And somewhere in the Imperial Palace on Coruscant, Emperor Palpatine himself took notice of disruptions that even the dark side couldn't fully illuminate. John Wick had come to this galaxy by accident, a stranger lost between worlds. But in choosing to stand against tyranny, in protecting a child, and helping people who fought for something beyond themselves, he'd found something he thought he'd lost forever. Purpose. The war was far from over. The Empire was vast, powerful, and ruthless. But for the first time in this impossible galaxy, John Wick wasn't alone. He had allies, a cause, and a reason to keep fighting. And in a universe bound by the Force, sometimes the most dangerous element was someone who operated outside its reach, a man with nothing left to lose and everything to prove.